Well, I hope you enjoyed the two interviews I put together. Both gentlemen gave some insightful information that I hope shines some light on the increasing costs that youth athletics are seeing. A couple of things I did want to point out. Mr. Griffin talked about participation in high school has steadily increased over the past 25 years. I found that interesting, and what Mr. Merklinger didn't point out in his video, but he shared with me afterwards, is his insurance in 2016 doubled. It went from $700 to insure his programs in 2015 to $1,500 to insure his programs for 2016. And the only thing that changed was adding a 12 and under team, which means that the insurance company assumed that there was more liability, more risk to insure kids who are a little bit stronger, a little bit bigger, a little bit faster, which makes sense coming from a previous insurance field. The other thing I wanted to point out was the number of sponsors he had. He mentioned that he had $2,000 in sponsors for the Coastal Crusaders. That was $1,000 from a parent and two $500 sponsors from two local businesses that the kids were playing on the team. Whereas Chad Griffin, the athletic director at Calvary, his sponsorships were upwards of $5,500, which is extremely high for a high school to produce that sort of money in sponsorships, which especially for a smaller single-A private school like Calvary. So some of the significance of the trend, I think it's going to make the elite athletes come from a higher social class. So you're going to see the parents who can afford to put their kids in the year-round training to get more expensive coaches. Those coaches who are in it for profit are usually coaches of a higher caliber. So you're going to see those athletes coming from those higher social economic levels is what I think the significance of this trend is. It's also the direction of the trend. You're going to see a lot more specialization in one sport. These kids who are playing year-round baseball or year-round volleyball, they're not going to have time to play basketball or do multiple sports. They're going to specialize in that one sport, which I think is going to handicap some of these kids when it gets to the next level. Specifically, when you see these 9-year-olds playing volleyball for from 9 to 18, they're going to have a plateau. So if they do get that college scholarship, even going to the next level, they've already been playing volleyball 5 nights a week, so they're not going to be able to improve much at that next level, which I'm going to find interesting as that study progresses to see if that is a handicap for some of those kids who are playing year-round. And lastly, the impact to the sports industry. Like I mentioned, there's going to be less well-rounded players. I think you're going to see because for instance, one of our volleyball girls this past year, they just won a state championship, but in gym the other day she couldn't throw a frisbee. One of the most athletic players on the volleyball court, but couldn't do anything, throw a frisbee or catch a softball. So that's interesting to me coming from, I played 3 sports in high school, and that was the goal, was to be well-rounded and get more experience. Well, now you're going to see, in my opinion, the impact to the sporting community. There are going to be more athletes that specialize just in one sport. Also, it's going to be less athletes at a younger level because they're not going to be able to afford to play those premium prices to do multiple sports. So it's going to mean for the budget of the family, they just have to pick one. The rec leagues even are charging a little bit more. Mr. Merklinger mentioned that his cost was $100 per player to play football. That doesn't include the cost of their helmet, the cost of their pads. That only covers jerseys and what he called a sports pack, which means their practice, a T-shirt and shorts type deal. So, in talking with one of our parents here who has a child who plays on the Coastal Crusaders, she said it was about a $400 investment when you consider that the helmet alone was $220. So that's a cost that's interesting to me. And I'm going to leave you with one of the inserts from Mr. Hyman's book that I pointed out, and he talks about the Stats Dad. It was the one of the people he talks about in Chapter 3 of his book. He says that without bothering to keep running totals, parents are paying any expense necessary to keep their youth players on the field in the same jerseys and cleats as their neighbor kids and leave them in it. If you ask them what they'll spend in a year on youth sports, all they could say is this: too much. Let's hope that trend changes for the hope of our future athletes. So that's my take. I'm hoping to hear your thoughts and looking forward to reading your comments. Thanks for a wonderful class, Dr. Gibson. I really enjoyed it. Have a great holiday season.